How you doing? It's Sean with the RFC. We're doing the Multi-Hyphenate show, and I have my good friend Natasha Hall here, actress, comedian. I could say philanthropist because I feel like you're so charitable in the work you do around animals and the vegan. Like I say philanthropist because it doesn't feel like activism. It feels like you're giving back to the community in the way you represent it and showcase it. And you also put your money where your mouth is there too. Like you show up to those events. It's really awesome. It's always inspired me, even if we don't perfectly align on the meat and potatoes of it. Yeah. So hi, thanks for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
Everybody likes to talk about themselves, so give me the opportunity.
6 hours later, I'm just like, all right, can we get to our second question?
I have one more thing. Exactly.
You've changed into a robe.
Yeah.
Yeah, your cat's like Leo's just asleep in the back.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning.
Okay. It was a hot summer night in 1991.
Great. You're from, if I recall, you were born in Atlanta and you moved to LA. Can you talk and walk me through that a bit?
Yes, I was born in Atlanta. When I was 7 or 8, my mom decided she wanted to go to film school. She went to USC and brought me out to California with her. And
I didn't know that. I didn't know that was the reason.
Yeah.
Cause what was your parents' line of work at the time?
My mom's, she had just gotten out of school. She was an immigrant from Ukraine. She met my dad, was an American at a bar in Moscow. He was on a business trip and came over to the United States. And my dad's not in entertainment at all. He's, worked for his dad's company for a long time. And then my mom was in college in my youth and had already gotten a couple degrees in communication. She got a theater degree really early on in life, and then she just decided that films were her passion, and so she wanted to produce. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. I had no idea.
Yeah, and so that's how I got started in it as well, is because I was her little actress in all her short films she had to do for USC. And I loved it. I loved all the attention. I loved everyone being like, wow, who, look at this little girl. And I was like, well, I'm going to get some more of that validation. Here we are.
Oh my God. I never knew that.
Yeah.
And it makes so much sense because when we met, I think you were 18. No, 21. You were young, right?
I was maybe 19, probably 18 or 19.
Yeah, and you were so good. You were so good, like right away. And I remember being like, she's had to have done this before, but I never really found out why. That makes so much sense. You weren't just like talented, you had a technique. You had an approachable technique that you could bring to pieces that were challenging for others in class.
Yeah, well, I I just dabbled in it as a kid. I did commercials. I did one little episode here and there on something, and then in high school, I would think I was 15. I decided I wanted to really seriously get into this and study it, and my mom let me essentially do homeschooling so I could go to the Stella Adler Academy full time, and there they have classes. So it's like you go to voice class, then you go to technique. It was like a whole day thing. So I did that for 2 years. So I'd already had that.
Oh my God.
When I came to Playhouse, and I went to another Meisner program for a year or two prior to that. So yeah, I guess I started.
Wow. Stella Adler on Hollywood Boulevard. Is that where it used to be?
Yep.
Did you live in the area or did you have to travel there?
I used to live in that area, but when I was going there, I had to travel I was at Beverly Hills High. We were living in Beverly Hills, so I was traveling from there.
So, okay, so you're at Beverly Hills High School. That's kind of one of the most famous or infamous high schools in the world. What was your personal experience going through there? Because you switched to homeschool after a while, I assume.
Yeah, my senior
Yeah.
year I was homeschooled or independent study. So you like have a tutor that's at the school and you only go for a few hours a week.
Mm.
It was weird. You know, I grew up like middle class, but going to Beverly Hills High, I felt like I was, destitute because just 16-year-olds with Range Rovers galore. Um,
Mm.
I didn't like it. I wasn't a big fan, not necessarily because of Beverly Hills, but just high school wasn't my jam. Um, I just was always kind of a loner. I had my like really close knit group of friends, and they were the only people I really cared to hang out with. And the whole group environment, especially being it's a really large high school, being around all those people, I never really vibed with too many people there. So
Mm. That makes sense. Yeah.
yeah,
Sounds like high school too. I mean, at
yeah,
a high school like that, I know two people who went there, and you're one of them. And he had the same experience where he's like, "Oh my god, I felt so poor."
yeah,
He's like, "It was so wild."
yeah.
Okay, I love that. So, man, that's so cool. I didn't realize that. Do you have any acting heroes? I feel like over the years, I've never really heard you geek out about somebody or some film or a TV show. And that's okay. I'm just curious because you're good. And I wonder if someone out there inspires you, like, ooh, I want to push myself to that type of performance.
Um, so many, but kind of an interesting one that always pops into my mind is Julianne Moore. I think I was
She's
just
so good.
so good. I was a Paul Thomas Anderson fan early on, and so she was obviously like one of his muses. And her performance in Magnolia, which is one of my favorite movies, just I don't know. You know what it is too is that her like acting's not just your choices that you make and your performance. Like you bring yourself to it, and I feel like I really resonate with her as a person. She's just got a really unique weight to her presence, and also like
Mm,
the lightness and a not taking herself too seriously. And she just gives me the energy of like having a really good time no matter what she's doing. And I just love to watch her. So she's one
mm.
of those for me.
Yeah,
Uh,
she's like in Children of Men, she's so good. And then in something on the other side of the spectrum, like Crazy Stupid Love, that
yeah,
performance could have been nothing, really. Like it could have been a paint by the numbers, but she added such nuance and like these beautiful brushstrokes.
yeah.
Such a good performance.
Are you familiar with Marion Cotillard?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, her
She's
performance
powerhouse.
in Rust and Bone, where she
Yes.
realizes
The
for the first
diving, right?
she's like a killer whale trainer.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, she loses her legs in an accident. And the scene where she wakes up and sees that she has no legs, that that was some of the best acting I've ever seen. And just because it's actors know it's very I think being surprised is the hardest thing to do as an actor. And
Mm.
that's the definition of surprise, waking up and realizing you have no legs. And it was so real. I just remember like I wanted to throw up. It was so like visceral.
Mm-hmm.
Um just out of this world. She's amazing. And then now I'm just on a stream of consciousness. But
Yeah, please.
oh gosh, what's her name? The actress who played the old lady in
Jenna Rollins.
Notebook. What? The
Jenna
Notebook?
Rollins. Jenna
Oh yeah,
Rollins.
she was
Yeah.
married to Cassavetes.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's the movie where she's woman under the influence?
Yeah. With Peter Falk, that dinner scene is like, woo! Lightning in a bottle.
I just another one of those performances that just is like that is a level of the craft that most people won't ever even brush up against. Like just
Mm,
incredible.
you're so right. Have you heard of Opening Night? It's about opening a play, and she's in it.
Really?
And she's just as, I mean, magnetic. Like, just a four. They did like four films.
Yeah.
I think A Woman Under the Influence stood the test of time better than the rest, but
Yeah.
still, like, if you're a student, right, like to go back and look at that
Yeah.
is because her performance, and it is interesting. It's like, why didn't she go more mainstream or just I know John must have passed away in the 70s or 80s. I'm sure that had an effect because they were probably intertwined. Because we know that happens in relationships too. Wow.
Yeah, my first time seeing her was The Notebook, and I was like, "Oh, sweet old lady." I didn't realize that she was like this prolific actress that blew my mind.
Yeah.
So very strange.
I love The Notebook. Side note.
Yeah. You're lying.
Yeah, I know. Do you have any favorite films or TV shows?
Magnolia, as I mentioned, I think it's a movie it's the movie that gets me re-excited about acting. When I watch it, or re-excited about film. There's some performances in there across the board. Like I think maybe one of Tom Cruise's best performances ever. That scene with him talking to his dad. His dad's on his deathbed, and there's so many layers. How angry he is at him, but this old man's dying, and what's the guy with 3 names that died? That was in that movie. Blonde guy. It'll come to us. Philip Seymour Hoffman. Yeah. He was amazing in that. Julianne Moore was amazing in that. I mean, I love an ensemble cast where everyone just kills it. And then I love the theme of that movie, and Paul Thomas Anderson's my favorite director, I think. But the theme of just like, I've got a cat on my lap now. Yeah. Say hi.
Hi.
The theme of like, what I took away from the movie is that like crazy coincidences are not that crazy. Like, again, spoiler alert, the part of that film that makes people hate the film, which is like towards the end and frogs just start falling out of the sky. And I think the point being made is like crazier things have happened. Like, yeah, that seems so unlikely for that to happen, but there's been so many things that have happened that are so statistically unlikely, and they still happen. And I just find that to be a thing to think about. So that one definitely stands out.
He did The Master too, right?
Yeah.
I worked with this guy who was an extra. He was an extra in one of our things, and he was an extra in the wedding party scene where Philip Seymour Hoffman's giving the speech. It's like, it's a great speech, but it might not be as memorable as some of the other moments in the film, right?
Yeah.
But he told me, and this is years ago because I think the film came out in 2010, but he like introduced me to this next level of professional acting. He was like, Philip Seymour Hoffman, and at least in this context, right? Because if you're doing it as a oneer in one take, you couldn't do what he was about to do. But he would energetically break up the speech. So he'd go like, boom, and he'd do like a moment, and then he'd kill the rest of the speech. And he'd just like fill it in because he was conserving his energy and knew the edit would be taking care of it. Like that, I mean, I'm sure he was in great communication, but I just love that approach. Most actors couldn't stomach looking shitty or not being great, and he's just like burying it. I love that. I love that.
I learned that lesson the hard way working on a short film once where I had a very emotional scene and I had not learned about that conserving your energy thing. So in the wide master shot, I was already bringing the full tears and the intensity. And by the time I got to my close up, I was like, I don't have any moisture left in my body. Like I have nothing left. So yeah, there's a whole nother layer of acting or being on camera and understanding all that stuff, which is crazy to think about. Just that's a whole nother layer that we don't learn about in acting class.
No, I've been listening to that Smartless podcast. One, because it's so entertaining. I love their banter and their chemistry is just amazing. But you're hearing industry professionals put their guard down. And Cate Blanchett was on the other day, and they were talking about tear sticks. And like, it's cool because they get inside baseball and then they pull themselves back,
Yeah.
And Cate Blanchett for years was like, no, tear stick. Oh, right. And she said she saw Toni Collette use them once. And Toni Collette's like one of the fucking best ever. And I think she, I'm misremembering the story slightly, so don't quote me, but pretty much she asked Toni, and Tony's like, well, yeah, like, I give it my all, but at some point you run out if they need more takes, and you got to get the job done.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh, because, I had that stigma, like, oh, never. But now that I've acted for a long time, I'm like, yeah, in the wide, I'm not faking it, but I'm kind of more, I let myself find it more there and then use it as kind of a way into the closer stuff.
Yeah.
But
and it takes the pressure off. Like for me, the biggest, buzzkill for performance is like, it has to happen this way. You have to cry on this line. So if I know that like the stakes are low, if I can't get there, I could use a tear stick. There's things I have on set. Nine times out of 10, I won't need it because it's like now the pressure's off. So, I think there's a kind of a difference. Well, not that Kate Blanchett wasn't a professional, but I just feel like the people that have worked a long time really have no ego in this because it's like, this is a job. I have to get the job done. They've had enough like working overtime days on rough sets that they're like, do I really give a shit if this is,
as long as it works.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
As long as it works. If someone's the most studious analytical actor, but like if it works for them and it works for us, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Exactly.
I actually don't give a shit. I'm trying to, I find in my own art and acting right now, I'm really trying to find the boundaries, the edge, trying to get uncomfortable more, push myself. It's been cool. It's been cool to see the art mature and grow, What have been some of your lessons in the last few years, either professionally, meaning like the business side, or in the artistry side? Because you've been booking quite a bit. I mean, you've been working steadily for a long time, so I'm sure you got tons of stories and anecdotes, but if anything sticks out.
I mean, I really feel like having all those years in acting class of like working on the hardest material, which most of the time I don't have to do anything that hard, like in my professional world, and then like failing and trying at all the hard stuff. But I developed a confidence that I don't think I would have had if I didn't do that. So now what I've learned the last few years has kind of just been trust yourself. It's like you put in the work. All I know that I need to do, like if I'm on set, my number one focus is being relaxed. An older version of me would have been like, had my headphones in, listening to the dramatic music, trying to get in this, oh my God, I can't lose it. I got to hold on to it. And I've built up enough self-confidence that it's like, nope, it's there. All I need to do is be a relaxed vessel and it will come through. And I wouldn't have developed that confidence if I didn't test that out so many times in acting class and figure out that I can trust that because it would work so many times. So trusting myself. I'm realizing that the things I book are the tapes I had the most fun on. There's just something that's subconscious that people are attracted to other people that are having a good time. Even if it's a dramatic scene, if I'm enjoying myself, if I'm willing to take a small risk or sometimes a big risk in some of my tapes, it lands well most of the time. I can't say it will always land well. That's part of taking a risk. But in some of the recent things I booked, I did really bizarre stuff in my tapes that I would never do. Like I held a fake stuffed animal as a dog, which I feel like I can just hear so many acting teachers in my life like, don't use props, which generally I'm against. Props are a tricky one because you can make yourself look really green really quickly by using props, because a prop should only make your performance better and feed you. And if it's not doing that, and if your performance isn't sharp, it just makes you look like you're adding things to kind of cover up for a
life vest.
Yeah. But in this case, I was like, no, I'm trusting it works for this. It's funny. I think it's funny. And I booked that, So I'm taking more risks. I'm having more fun. the last few years also, it's just, I've realized the importance of having a life outside of this because, like I said about Julianne Moore, it's not just her performance, it's who she is that makes her performances so magnetic because she has a weight to herself as a person. And if you don't have a life, you lose that. You lose that internal joy and confidence that casting directors, producers are subconsciously attracted to when they're casting. So again, I hear so many acting teachers' voices in my ears over the year, like, you gotta, blood, sweat, and tears, breathe this shit, eat acting the moment you wake up. And yeah, part of that's true. Like, this is a really difficult industry. You gotta put a lot of work in, but also like have a life and be a person and be fulfilled outside of this because that translates. You can't help but if like this is your only life to be desperate, and that translates on camera. It just does.
Totally does.
So,
And
yeah.
I find that desperation even shows up not in the way you think, like, because I had that energy at times, for sure. I think it's human. But mine didn't look like, oh, please give me the job. It looked like over intensity.
Yeah.
Like trying too hard.
Yeah.
Or, and once I realized that, it's exactly what you said. You got to cultivate. I was saying this to Kyle the other day. It's like if you're empty within, then you can be temporarily filled without.
Yeah.
And so you want to talk about a little of some of the things you fill your life up with, like maybe outdoors or animals or what you do for work now, which I find super interesting.
Yeah, well, kind of on accident, but I'm really happy it happened, kind of leading up to the pandemic. And when the pandemic started, acting was kind of dead. And through an interesting series of events, I got a part-time job as a counselor at a rehab for drug addiction. And that's been such an amazing thing because the schedule is such that I can get my groups covered anytime I need to. And I'm 100% flexible, but it's given me so much joy and fulfillment because as much as I love acting and the craft of it and the art of it's so inspiring, and yes, movies very much change people's lives, I don't get a direct experience of like making a difference in someone's life. But in this job, I do on a very personal level. I run group therapy essentially for people kind of in the most vulnerable state of their lives, and get to actually like help them and hear people come back 3 months later and be like, my life was set on a different path because of this one thing you said in this group, and blah blah blah. So that has just been it's taken so much of the emotional pressure off of acting because it's like I have this other thing that just I enjoy so much.
I'm glad to hear that you enjoy it.
Yeah, it's also it's a fascinating psychology and acting are peas in a pod, so kind of watching people's psychological struggles unfold is very fascinating and inspires me artistically too because you get to see people's defense mechanisms, you get to understand how the trauma made that person into who they are, and I just love it. So that's a huge part of what fills my life up outside of acting. Relationships are so important. Like, whether we like it or not, we're mammals. We thrive on connection with other beings, and so through my own personal work, I think I've been able to like create some really healthy, awesome friendships. My romantic relationship it gives me a lot of life and joy. And then nature. I mean, those are like my holy trinity. That's where I reconnect. And when I'm in nature, especially when I'm in the forest, I just feel like nothing matters in like a good way. I'm just like, oh, those problems that I thought I had? No. Yeah.
Do you find, like, do you have a routine with nature? Like, if you go a week without, are you like, fuck, I feel that? Or do you really try and at least hit it X amount of times?
I've learned to, for me personally, let go of routines because I'm such a type A personality that they end up just giving me anxiety because I'm like, I'm not doing it perfectly. And if I relax, like I do things a healthy amount anyways. So I don't have like a set thing with it, but I just am naturally, that's what I want to do. You know, I got, or Leo got e-bikes for his birthday. And so my favorite thing is to just at least once a day, I go out on my e-bike and like ride around the neighborhood and ride up to this park. And we have these old lady friends that go to the park every day and like, you know, I hang out with their dogs like a weirdo, even though I don't have a dog. Just little things like that. Like if I can't go on a hike, I can go on a little bike ride, and it's just, yeah.
We've been on a ton of hikes.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I think I went on to a hike maybe a year ago with Lish, right when we were reconnecting.
Yeah.
And I was in Ojai, and it was a beautiful day. You know, I think we did like 8.5 miles. You know, a little sunburn that kind of day. And I remember we were sitting and talking, and these like gnats or something were covering my right leg. And Lish is super outdoorsy. So I'm like, do these things bite? And she's like, no. And I'm like, I don't know. They're a little, like something's happening. And flash forward, they do bite.
Oh,
and
no.
I had like 50 bites on my right leg. So that's me in nature.
That's great. Love that.
Oh yeah. I think you're good. We talked about your process, I think. So when you get a script, like let's say it's for a pilot, like what are you doing depending on the material? Like do you have sort of a routine, a way to get in?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I think I read it. I try to get a sense of the tone. That kind of informs everything else. I'll, and for pilots, you really don't know. I feel like that's the hardest thing about pilots is you can't go watch another episode of the show and be like, oh, okay, this is it. You're kind of guessing at it. So I'll look at the producers, the director, see what else they've done, and kind of guess at the tone based on that and what I'm reading in the script. And then I look at whatever my scenes are through a couple different lenses. I think really helps me to look. My first question, like for an audition, I guess, is, what is the purpose of this scene? Because if I can accomplish whatever the purpose of the scene is, I'm halfway there, if not more. You have to look at it like from the writer's perspective, right? Why is this in here? Because every scene is pushing the story forward. So if I don't push the story forward here, I'm not gonna get this job, and I'm not gonna be effective in this role. So I look at it from the writer's perspective, and then I try to look at it from the director's perspective, because sometimes that can inform certain things. Like if I'm auditioning for something like a procedural, you know that like probably the last couple lines of the scene are going to be like in a super close up. They just have this weird pattern of like kind of closing in on people, and then the last line's like this like dramatic thing. That's going to inform your performance too. I try to think of things like that. So kind of like technical things are important, which is something I don't think about if it's like theater, obviously, but it's such a huge part in auditioning or acting in TV and film. So I look at those things, and then once I'm clear on those things, because those are non-negotiable, like if I don't move the story forward in the way it's supposed to be meant to move forward, I'm screwed. And then I can look at it as an actor, like, okay, well, what's my flair on this? And yes, I need to push the story forward in this way, but maybe I can make this choice that's interesting and I like and doesn't change the flow of the story being moved forward. So I really, our teacher Carnegie and Holly at Playhouse West were always big on not just going straight to memorizing the lines, and I really agree with that, because if you do that first, it's very hard to get the kind of cadence out of your head, and then you can now look at it from a different perspective, like, oh, okay, this is how the writer intended it, and like I'm stuck in the way I've learned it. So I really try to not do that. And I work on it enough that the memorization generally just happens. And that's that's kind of my process. And then
Do you work on it by yourself or with a coach?
I work on it by myself.
Have you ever worked on material with Leo?
Sometimes I'll ask his opinion, but I don't know. I'm very much a lone wolf with that kind of thing. Like, I have confidence in myself. Like, sometimes, like, he worked on a multicam for 5, 6 years or something. So sometimes I'll ask him for like pacing things and like, how do you feel like this joke lands? But in general, I feel pretty clear. I don't usually have a lot of questions. And I'm just like, okay, I know I need to get to this point. Now, how am I going to get there? So I'm pretty insular with how I work on
I love
things.
that. I find myself rather protective of my performances.
Yeah.
And can be even more sensitive to a partner's feedback.
Yeah.
Hey! Yeah.
Yeah, well, because the one thing for sure that will make my performance suffer is like self-doubt or questioning myself. So I'm even like probably really irritating when he has to help me with auditions because like I don't want to hear anything until I've asked, because
I love that.
I don't want to think about it,
Yeah.
It's like feels like it's almost always I end up using my first take because my instincts were correct, and I'll like try to mess with it. Not always. Sometimes you need a few takes to kind of get to the flow, but so often when I've done the work, my first take is the best one. So yeah.
Do you have a hard time deciphering takes, or have you kind of nailed that to a science? For me, I'm basically like, if I'm doing more than 3 takes, I shouldn't have started filming.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like, sometimes that's true. If you film that many, but sometimes there's just auditions where the words, no matter what you do not come out of your mouth naturally.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's
like,
different.
I always thrive where I don't know. There's certain material that it's like, I did all the work, but I just have to try to make these words sound like a human would actually say them. Some things, are not written that well.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah.
So you did Mom, the sitcom. Was that Chuck Lorre?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's still running, but it's 2 of my favorite comedians and actress, Allison Janney and Anna Faris.
Mm-hmm.
And what was that experience like from booking? Because I know sitcom runs at a different clip than maybe like NCIS or Navy SEALs. So what was that experience like?
I'm trying to remember back. I think it did happen quite quickly. Like just from my audition to booking it to being on set, I think it was all within like a week or 2. I love sitcoms. I mean, again, this is how it changes an actor is that back in the day, it's like I thought I would have not been happy unless I was like only working on these Oscar nominated films and I was just a craft.
Same.
But now actually working, I'm like, sitcoms, man, that is the way to a happy life as an actor because it's the most normal schedule. You go to a studio in LA, you work like, table read one day, 1 day of rehearsals, film 3 days, you have a weekend, you have time off, it's like having a normal job. And I feel like it would be very sustainable for like having a family and just being balanced. So even though that's not my favorite genre to watch, I would be so pumped to be on a sitcom. That would be so ideal just for my lifestyle. Yeah, I don't know. And they're a blast. It's kind of like theater, like the rehearsal and there's kind of a musical nature to sitcoms with the 1, 2, 3 and jokes and they're just a lot. I don't even remember what the question was that you asked me, but hopefully I'm answering it.
Yeah, you did great. You did great. My buddy Eddie was on that 80s show, and they did 3-day work weeks for the actors, so they only shot out 1 day. And I remember him telling me, when you get on a well-run machine, and then all of a sudden, like, there's all these intricacies you just like never know or are privy to until you're in Hollywood. So, for example, he did 2 Broke Girls as like a guest star, and he said they had a guest director, and he's like, well, generally a guest director is fucking up the schedule because they don't know, and it's hard when you don't have a rhythm. And he's like, it was really interesting to watch, like the cast be like, the fuck, we're not used to being here this late on our 3-day work week. And he was like, it is the best schedule. But imagine 3 days, network money, it's like silly.
It's
with
ridiculous.
silliness.
Crazy.
So now let's switch to film. You booked a huge movie, Game Night, and I just watched that for the first time recently, and it was really good, actually.
It's a funny movie. Like
Yeah, it was really good. I often need a little time from things that are like hot topics to give it a fresh perspective. So I'm glad I gave this one time because I really enjoyed it. And you were very funny, and I'd say you were playing against your type.
Yeah.
Because you're like very smart. Maybe one of the smartest people I've ever met. And I mean, not maybe, you are. And yeah, so talk if you can. If I know it was a few years ago, but what was your experience there?
Yeah, well, my character was very dumb, is what you left out of that, but I think people got it. My whole joke on set was like, guys, it takes a genius to play someone this dumb, so no.
I love that.
It was great. I loved working on that film. I was in my hometown in Atlanta. There was something very like full circle about it, like coming back to the where I was born, being really in the neighborhood, very close to the neighborhood I grew up in, and then just Jason Bateman and Rachel McAdams. I just like dream come true. It was I don't even know what to say about it. It was kind of funny because I flew out there and I had to fly out there twice for it. And the first week I was there, it was all like super early call times, like 4 a.m. But I was on LA time and I had been going to bed at like 1 a.m. LA time. So I was just dead, just completely dead. And then the second week I had to fly back like a month later, was all nighttime shoots. And I remember the makeup artist being like, you're like a completely different person. Yeah, the morning version of me. It was just not. I don't think I spoke to any. Like they probably thought I was terrible. I just like could not function. And then the second time, I was like, "Hey guys, how's everyone doing?" And they're like, "Wow, what's going on here?" But it was just so much fun. I mean, everybody was really fun. We had our classmate in that movie as well, Kylie Bunbury.
Oh, that's right.
That was another weird full circle thing of like, wow, we're out here, we're doing this.
Yeah.
Working with Jason Bateman was just a dream. He's hilarious all the time. So I was just excited to just be in the wake of his funniness. It was just dream come true. It was so much fun. Rachel McAdams, I think I got very lucky. There's a lot of really not pleasant, very successful people. Yeah. But those two happen to be just so not, I don't know. I don't like the word humble, but just really down to earth. I feel like I hear people say that all the time, like, oh, they're so down to earth. But it's true. It's really exciting when you're a much less established actor working with these huge people and they make you feel at home and like you're on the same level as them. That's just really I think for me, a rare experience and really cool. So, yeah.
Yeah, because I think it's also like, on some level, a relief that you're like, someone didn't have to be a horrendous, brutal asshole to make it.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Because I know you've dealt with some wild shit.
Yeah, we won't name any names, but that's definitely more common. It's just where you're like, oh, it is like this. Oh, God, that really sucks. It's just, why, man? Why? Like, you've got such an amazing situation here, and you're just a terrible person. Anyway, so I was really glad that on that one, that wasn't the case.
Yeah, me too. How does it hit you when something, on the negative side comes in your space? Like, what's your way of handling it, or what have you learned that has maybe helped you avoid even those situations if you can?
don't let people try to intimidate me. I mean, there's like, I worked with someone at some point, I won't say who or when, but who everybody was scared of on set. And I don't know, it's the rebel in me, but I was just like, no. And I just treated them like an equal, and I got respect back. Because I think there's like a certain level of, they're used to people like cowering. And when that doesn't happen, it's like they kind of correct themselves a little bit. So just kind of not putting yourself in that like, oh, you are the star, you are the position, and just talking to them like they're just any other person. That's been a way. And I think it's just taught me to take nothing personally. That's been a huge lesson, is that like when you see the inner workings of it all, it's like you understand how much politics is involved in casting, how much like there's just so many factors that have nothing to do with how good you are that goes into it. And at first it's very disheartening, because I always came from the belief of like, be so good they can't ignore you. Someone told me that very early on. I was like, okay, I'm going to get really good. But then you get really good and you're like, oh, but there's still things that are completely out of my control. Like, you really had your heart set on this part, and then it ended up someone casted their niece or something,
Or you're not sleeping with them.
Yeah. That's a thing too.
I was like, that can't be that prevalent, and I'm like, it's way more prevalent than people could even think.
It is. I actually, I don't know, this is just popping into mind, and look, everyone can choose their own path. That never worked for me, because I want to like be okay with myself at the end of the day. I don't want to have imposter syndrome and feel like I made it because of this other thing and other, and a reason other than I was really good and I was right for the role or whatever. Who knows? Maybe I would have been much more successful if I'd gone the other route, but whatever. But I had turned down a movie one time that had in it just this. Not that I'm against sex scenes at all. I think sex is a part of life, so it's a part of art and acting. But it was just for the sake of having a hot girl naked in the script. Not even naked. I think it was just a sex scene. It had no purpose. It didn't move the story forward at all. And I turned down not a ton of money, but a good chunk of money, and I didn't do the film. And I kind of questioned it, like, damn, should I have done that? Like, was that, I don't know. But it was a little bit inspiring, because the director of that film, like 6 months later or something, emailed me and was like, hey, I never got a chance to tell you this, but I just thought that was really cool and respectable and admirable, that you didn't do the film for those reasons. And he's like, I think that's really rare. And, so I don't know. I just think you could be surprised, because it is so rare to like, not be shady in the industry. It might pay off later, right? Like you'll end up working with and being around the kind of people that you want to be around. It might take longer, but it's a lot more satisfying, I think.
Yeah, and great answer. Thank you. And I think, the issue as it occurs to me is like, it's like, not only do I not want to exchange sex for this, but I don't really want to exchange anything else aside from the ability to do so. And sex just happens to be probably the most meaningful act we can do between two people, in a sense, because it brings life. So there's a lot of hang-ups around it and all that. But, so this brings me to Kaminsky Method, which was a great booking for you, and you got to work with the fucking legend, Michael Douglas. And also, it was kind of, not a sex scene, but kind of, right? It was like the preamble,
Yeah.
in a way. So, can you talk about, let's take it in sections, but can you talk about the professional side of that, like the booking aspect, if it was an abnormal thing, because it was recurring guest star, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then working with Michael Douglas, and then what was your comfort level? You weren't naked, but you were in lingerie, if I recall, right? So, and it's a huge Netflix show, so I'm assuming the crew's big. And so, talk about those three things, if you could.
Um, yeah, the booking it part, it was one of those tapes I took a risk on, but like you have to know, who your showrunners are, and kind of have to go like, I have a feeling they would appreciate this. Some people are very by the book, but this is another Chuck Lorre project, and Kaminsky Method is a very specific tone. There's a lot of improv on that show. And I was like, you know what? I think this is funny. I really do. And it ended up working in my favor. But if I had, taken that same risk in another tape for something else, it might have gone horribly wrong. So I think I just made a smart choice there in my, just choices I made in my performance in the audition. And naturally, I was out of town when I booked it, and they were like, "You need to be here in like 5 seconds." And I was panicking, and like we didn't tell them I was out of town, and I just like, immediately got on a flight. It was very stressful. I ended up being totally fine. It was during COVID, so I didn't even have to be in town for filming. It was I had to be in town to COVID test a certain number of days prior to the start. So that was very stressful. And then, yeah, my first scene with Michael Douglas of all of them was the one where I'm in lingerie, sitting on his back, icing his back, post-coital. So it was like, oh, hello, Mr. Michael Douglas. Okay, yes, I will mount you now, absolutely. And it was fun. I really like. I was fine, but he's very, at least the days that I worked with him, kind of introverted, and so he just didn't say much, and I'm kind of introverted, so I was like, no, one of us has got to start some conversation here, because I'm literally just sitting on your butt, and I've never really talked to you before.
Acting!
Yeah, he was very nice, and it's just another really fun one to work on, because it's like, that's my type of show, like that is my type of comedy, my type of humor. I just thrive in that environment. Gosh, I'm forgetting the other actor's name on there, but he's also in Stranger Things. Plays like he's in the.
I'll look it up. Come in.
Why do I want to say Paul?
Paul Dano? No, Alan Arkin.
Nope.
Paul Reiser.
Yes. Oh my gosh, he's so funny. Another really nice guy. But just there were some moments.
Good.
There were some moments that he improvised that were inspiring to me. Like there's a moment where, I come out of the bedroom and he doesn't know I'm there. I just had sex with Michael Douglas, and he does this look that's not in the script, but he's like trying not to look at me in the lingerie, and it's just this little moment, and it's like those are the things that make a performance. It's not on the page. I went back and rewatched that little 1 second cutaway to his reaction of like,
he's so good.
He's so good. He's so funny. But yeah, that was inspiring to watch those people improvise, and it's all funny, and they were all really nice. Again, I've been lucky there in a lot of ways. The shows I loved working on the most, the people were really cool.
That makes sense. Have you found that it's, at least for me, like there was this phase of actors improvising in Hollywood, and a lot of them, I felt, had no business improvising, because
like
there's
shows or in auditions or
no like huge movies, and you can tell like they're improvising this scene, like they end of this scene, the button, they're just bup, 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 bup. And because when you were talking about Paul Reiser, like there's a difference between improvising well and improvising towards the story well.
Yeah.
And like that's the best improv to me, is like it's not just to be funny, it's funny within the confines of this world, because that's a skill set.
Yeah.
Like to be able to make something up in character that adds and enhances and uplifts, like, and I don't see it, so it's a rare gift, and it's not so obvious. So like the lay person's like, yay, like funny, but for me, I'm looking, when I geek out, that's the kind of stuff what you just mentioned. Like I would have loved that, because he's on this show. God, what is it? He's doing a sitcom right now on Hulu. Reboot. Have you seen that?
No, but everyone keeps talking about that because it makes fun of actors and stuff.
Well, it makes it like shit slam dunks on the industry. And it's amazing. Like the actor stuff's hilarious, but I think that's like old material, like the like making fun of actors, but they make fun of the writers' room, the execs, like the
Okay.
it's very satisfying because it's super real.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, like they have one character on the show. They're like, "Oh, you're the Hulu VP of comedy." She's like, "Yeah, I came over from Silicon Valley and I sold this." Like it's all just like data companies. They're like, "How'd you end up here?"
Yeah.
But there she is.
I love that. It's like such a niche, the entertainment industry. Like, I'm just surprised that got made into a show because I feel like so much of the general population would just have no idea.
Yeah, I
But
don't know how well it's doing.
yeah.
Um, and it's also I'm such a geek about. I mean, it's the same writer, I believe, creator of My Crazy Ex-Girlfriend,
Oh, okay.
and the writing is so stellar that I actually don't know if people will appreciate it yet.
Mm.
It might be something like Party Down or Arrested Development, where it's that good. And like I've even watched it. I've watched the pilot like 6 times
Wow.
because just the way they weave stuff in,
Yeah.
they're like it's meta, it's inside baseball, and it's also not, like it's fucking great. Because another big theme in the show is old Hollywood versus like new, like more liberal, progressive, woke. Like that's how they phrase it, and
Mm.
it's so funny. It's so funny. So Paul Reiser's like old Hollywood. So basically, it's a reboot. His show, which was like misogynistic, just heinous, like dad jokes, is getting rebooted by his daughter. And oh, dude, it's so funny.
Great concept.
Let's see. We're kind of wrapping it up here.
Yeah.
Thank you so much so far for your time. What
Absolutely.
So if someone wanted to hire you, what would they hire you as? Like, some people are like, "Oh, I'm a this." For you, it's like, "I fucking act," right? But is there other things that someone could hire you for that I'm just not aware of or
Escort.
right. Well, right. I
You know, I mean, gotta pay
obviously.
bills. Gotta pay
Right.
bills.
For the
Uh,
cats.
yeah, exactly. The cat's gotta eat. Um, Shit. I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of a one-trick pony when it comes to that. I, I don't even want to say it because like I have such a respect for all the different art forms in the entertainment world, and like I have not studied directing. I don't have, like acting. I have put my time in, but like I love it. Like I find it fascinating. My brain works in that way. I would love to direct.
You'd be a
Um,
killer director.
Yeah, yeah. I have a weird kind of personality type in the acting world because I feel like I'm very left brained. I'm actually much more logical than I am like just flowy and artistic. And I think that would lend itself to something like a director or producing. I don't envy you. That's so much freaking work. Like acting, I love because it's like I have my one little job and I just got to show up and do this. Producer is like you got to worry about everything, and it just seems really stressful. So I'm kind of just available for acting. I
I
think.
love that. No, I love that. That's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on is because you are an actor. Like that's what you do, and you're very good at it. And I definitely think you should explore directing. It was interesting in December. I had a meeting with this producer. She saw Helmet and was interested in her. It's fascinating. She works for this one director, but he just got hired to do Blade for Marvel, and she basically like told me like Marvel produces Marvel. Like it doesn't even make sense for me to go over there and try and produce a Marvel film. But it was kind of like a splash in the face because I've been having. Maybe I should change the language around that. Getting to produce my own material, but I'd really love not to.
Yeah.
At least in the same intensity.
Yeah.
And it was kind of wild to be sitting in front of somebody who's like, no, that's what I like to do. Nothing else, just produce. And I've actually reflected that that's pretty rare to find.
Yeah.
And especially someone who's good and capable and you want to be around, because you're going to talk to your producer night and day if you're directing.
Yeah.
So it was that was a cool moment to be like, oh yeah, they exist.
Yeah. Like, what's wrong with you? Just wondering.
I know. And she was so, and she's worked on huge movies.
Yeah.
Queen and Slim, which is one of my favorites for the last 10 years. It's like Black Bonnie and Clyde, essentially.
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's phenomenal. But she worked on it, and it was just cool to be like, oh, all right, it does exist. I'm going to keep calling that into my life.
Yeah. Absolutely.
If you were going to direct, would you probably comedy first, huh?
Yeah.
You're so fucking funny.
I want to do like single cam. I mean, that's just what naturally. I don't have to think about it. Like I other genres I'd have to really sit and think and storyboard. But I think like the single cam comedy is just my natural way of existing. So that would come pretty naturally to me. But
when you were doing like, like the Matt Cutshall, is that how you say his last name? Like
I think so. I don't know. I've been
when you were doing like the sketches with him, did you alter your acting? Did you prepare in the same way? Or are you just like, this is fun with my buddy? Like, how'd you approach that work? Because it is different, right? It's different.
Most of the time I didn't know what I was doing until I got there. So there was no preparing. Yeah, I mean, it's the ultimate no stakes, which is why it's so fun. It's because it's all improv. It's just, there's no stakes. It's all for fun. Everybody's really fun.
You've been in some of his best stuff. I mean, his emo stuff is really funny, but like, I feel like that's his shit. Like but like some of the sketches, oh my God, the one where it looks like they're checking you out, but it's all his buddies and they drive away. Jitterbug. I've watched it like 100 times probably.
That was one that like quite a few takes were ruined because we couldn't stop laughing. Like, I was just like tears forming. So I was like, don't fucking laugh and ruin this.
It's really good. It's really good. All right, my friend. Well, I'm gonna end the recording and then we'll just chit chat and then leave.
Okay.
But before we do, just want to say I love you. You're amazing. All the growth and work you've done on yourself. You're such an incredible person. Obviously, you're an amazing actress, but that really does come second to just who you are and what you stand for. And I have nothing but love and respect for you. So thank you again for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Johnny. I love you. You've been one of my best friends for a long time.
Thank you. All right. I'm going to stop the recording.
Okay.